Discover the incredible secret, 2 minutes to reveal hidden blessings from God's plan. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, King Ahasuerus reigned over the sprawling Persian Empire, a realm stretching from India to Kush. The richness of his court was unmatched, sparkling with gold and jewels. Yet, beneath the opulence thrummed the pulse of hidden dangers. In this era, lives could change in the blink of an eye. A young Jewish orphan named Esther, raised by her cousin Mordecai after a tragedy befalling her family, walked the thresholds of possibility and peril in Susa, unaware of the monumental destiny that awaited her. When Queen Vashti dared to defy the king's command, her act of courage ignited a search for a new queen among the most beautiful maidens of the empire. An edict swept across the land, calling forth young women, and Esther, with her breathtaking beauty and quiet strength, was taken into the palace. The seduction of court life wrapped around her, yet each silken garment and jeweled crown masked the perilous politics behind gilded walls. As the days turned into weeks, Esther endeared herself to her new surroundings, gaining favor with all who beheld her, including the king, yet a heavy burden lay upon her heart. Unknown to her husband, Ahasuerus, was the truth of her lineage as a Jew. The king's decree lost its brilliance when shadows loomed, in the form of Haman, the cunning advisor, whose ambition threatened to obliterate her people. The complexity of being both queen and hidden Jew twisted in Esther's spirit like the threads of fate itself. Mordecai, ever watchful from the gates of the palace, learned of Haman's vile decree to annihilate the Jews. With urgency, he implored Esther, his voice echoing a divine truth that generated a flicker of courage within her trembling heart. Who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this? His words wrapped around her, igniting her spirit with both dread and determination. Torn between the fear of the king's wrath and the desperate plea of her people, Esther stood on the brink of destiny. With fasting and prayer, she cried out to God, preparing to confront Ahasuerus. The weight of her purpose bore down upon her. To risk her life by approaching the throne without summons meant courting death. The golden scepter represented not only the king's authority but also the uncertainty of grace. As she approached the great hall, the air thickened with suspense. Clad in her royal vestments, Esther felt the opulence of her surroundings pin her between glory and fear. The king's eyes met hers, and in a moment that stretched into eternity, he extended his scepter. The world held its breath. Would she reveal her true identity? Would she wield her influence for good against the darkness of Haman's plot? Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. Esther could feel the burden of her people pressing against her heart, inching ever closer. The stakes could not be higher. Every breath she took in the silence of the court felt like an invocation, a desperate plea for divine intervention. With holy resolve, she understood her role woven into the fabric of God's plan, a pivotal moment shimmering on the cusp of revelation. As she opened her mouth, she prepared to unveil the truth, her heart ablaze with purpose, her people's fate hanging delicately in the balance. What awaited her, compassion or wrath? The answers lie ahead, veiled in the mystery of God's providence, yearning to be revealed. Esther's heart raced in the charged atmosphere of the great hall, the king's gaze now a piercing weight upon her soul. She felt time suspended as though heaven and earth conspired with her in that pivotal moment. With the golden scepter swaying gently in Ahasuerus' hand, Esther was reminded that grace could only be drawn by the courage of a faithful heart. "O King Ahasuerus," she began, her voice firm yet trembling, "if I have found favor in your sight and it pleases the king, let my life be granted to me, and my people the Jews, for we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated." The words tumbled forth in urgent passion, carrying with them not just her truth, but the heart of a people ensnared in despair, the king's brow furrowed in confusion as he leaned forward. Who is he, and where is he, who has dared to do this? His voice thundered through the hall, authority laced with a hint of fear. Esther's heart thudded as she took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of strength bestowed upon her from the heavens above. A foe, an enemy, this wicked Haman, she exclaimed, pointing a trembling finger towards the advisor lurking nearby. A profound silence enveloped the court as murmurs of shock rippled among the attendants. Haman's countenance fell, pale and aghast. In that moment, the scales tipped in favor of righteousness. The king's face blazed with anger, the glint of betrayal igniting fury in his heart. Haman, he roared, turning to his trusted advisor with barely contained wrath. Aren't you bound to answer for this treachery? Haman, caught like a mouse in a trap, stumbled in his thoughts, grasping for a lifeline amid the storm. What desperate excuse could encompass his vile intentions? Yet, there were none, only the reality that wrapped around him like a noose. As the realization of Haman's dark plot settled upon the court, Esther, emboldened by the mighty hand of God, spoke again. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued for the salvation of my people, for they are but innocent lambs led to the slaughter. The king's fury burned brighter as he summoned his guards. Let this villain be taken away to the gallows he has prepared for Mordecai. And in that fateful moment, justice was woven into the fabric of time, delivering a swift and potent blow against evil. Yet amidst the swirling chaos of emotion and decision, Esther felt the weight of her calling deepen. This moment was not merely a pantomime of justice but a divine orchestration, each thread leading to God's incomparable plan, a plan to save his people from destruction, revealing the beauty of redemption. And so, Esther, filled with a steadfast resolve, fell to her knees. She prayed silently, a whisper of thanks mingled with the hope for justice and mercy over her beloved nation. A spark flickered within her soul, igniting her mission to fight for her people, for the very legacy of her ancestors rested upon her shoulders. The first rays of dawn illuminated the palace, casting a warm glow over the chaos that bound them. The echo of Mordecai's words reverberated in her heart, "Who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Unbeknownst to all, the tapestry of divine providence continued to weave. The heart of the king had turned, but the unfolding of God's ultimate plan was only beginning. What further mysteries lay veiled in the shadows, waiting to be unveiled? The doors of the great hall swung open, and the soldiers of the king advanced with haste, ready to fulfill their sovereign's command. Haman, stricken by fear, could only glance back at Esther, who stood unwavering in her resolve, the glow of divine purpose illuminating her features. "Take him away," Ahasuerus commanded, his voice imbued with the fierce justice of a king wronged. As Haman was led from the hall, the weight of his treachery settled upon the court like a heavy shroud. Esther's heart fluttered in her chest, a mixture of anxiety and hope filled the air, yet she prayed silently that deliverance was drawing nearer. The cries of the people echoed in the streets of Shushan, a city ripe with unrest. The decree that had once brought despair now stirred a collective recognition of the peril they faced, a life intertwined with the fate of an entire nation. And as this reality dawned within her heart, Esther understood her task was far from complete. "Let a new decree be written," she implored as she gathered her strength. "Let it be known that the Jews may stand to defend themselves." Her voice rang clear, and though she trembled, divine courage flowed through her veins like a river. "Indeed, they shall," Ahasuerus responded, the weight of his crown stark against the righteousness burgeoning forth from the unfolding story. "What is written in the name of the king cannot be revoked," he added, his voice now tinged with a sense of urgency. Mordecai, summoned hastily to the presence of the king and queen, stood before them, his heart unwavering, for he had faith that the God of Israel was orchestrating their salvation. "Write as you see fit," he instructed the scribes, and the ink flowed as words were etched upon the scrolls, proclaiming salvation to the Jews and their right to protect themselves against any who would rise against them. As the day proceeded to its twilight, the sun cast a golden hue upon Shushan, and a new decree blazed forth in the land, an echo of hope where despair had once dwelled. Esther, inhaling deeply, felt the warmth of the sun wrap around her, a confirmation that God was present in their midst. Yet even as victory seemed near, treachery lingered like dark shadows. Haman's fate was not yet sealed. In a frantic bid to escape the justice of the king, he found himself begging for mercy at the feet of Esther. But neither the sight of his desperation nor the pleas spilling from his lips would sway the heart of the ruler, whose wrath remained kindled. The fate of Haman, the architect of doom, was turning upon itself. He had prepared a gallows for Mordecai, yet in that divinely woven tapestry of fate, it poised to become his own. And the onlookers who witnessed this scene, their hearts heavy with uncertainty, could feel the profound workings of God stirring within the silence. As Esther considered the gravity of their circumstances, she sensed a deeper revelation unearthing. There was a divine appointment at play, a potent reminder of God's unyielding faithfulness to his people. Who knows, she murmured to herself, if all this has been for such a time as this? But even as questions swirled around her, a sudden clarity emerged, a hint of something greater, yet to be revealed. God's promise loomed on the horizon, hidden within the intricate threads of their plight. What divine lessons, what steadfast truths remained to be unveiled in the face of uncertainty? The story was unfolding as a grand narrative of salvation, a reflection of God's sovereignty and love that transcended fear and despair, yet the finale remained unspoken, the ultimate revelation awaited to be unveiled in God's perfect timing. As the dusk descended upon Shushan, the city breathed a sigh of mixed relief and apprehension. The streets were alive with whispers of the new decree, yet the shadow of Haman's treachery lingered like a dusky cloud overhead. Esther, her heart entwined with the destiny of her people, went forth with Mordecai to rally the Jews, encouraging them to prepare for the coming confrontation. "Be of good courage," Mordecai urged, raising his voice above the din of distraught populace. "The Lord has opened the door, and we shall not falter. Trust in our God, for he fights for us. Remember how he delivered our forefathers from Egypt." And as the command echoed through the streets, a resurgence of spirit ignited within the hearts of the Jews. They fasted and prayed, calling upon the God of Israel, invoking the promise made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yet, unbeknownst to them, Haman harbored his dark intentions still. Furious and humiliated, Haman turned his rage toward the gallows he had constructed, a grim monument to his ambitions that now foreshadowed his own demise. He sought the counsel of his wife, Zeresh, and his friends, who had once sung his praises, now watching the house of cards he built begin to topple. "Let a decree go forth to hang Mordecai from the gallows," he commanded fiercely. "His insolence has cost me everything. Soon, I will dispose of him, and the glory of my plans shall be restored." But even in his plotting, the God of Israel was not silent. That night, as Haman rested uneasily, Ahasuerus lay awake, troubled. The weight of the kingdom pressed heavily upon him, and in an act of divine providence, he called for the chronicles to be brought before him. As the scrolls unfurled, the king was reminded of Mordecai's heroism, how he had uncovered the conspiracy against him, how he had saved his life. What honor and dignity have been bestowed upon Mordecai for this? The king inquired, his heart stirred by the remembrance. "Nothing has been done for him," answered the attendant. Then Ahasuerus, inspired by divine thoughts, turned to his aides. "Who is in the court?" he asked. For at that very moment, Haman had entered to speak to the king about Mordecai's hanging. "Bring Haman to me." The king commanded. Haman entered, full of pride and schemes, ready to propose his plan against Mordecai. Yet before he could utter a word, Ahasuerus declared, "What should be done for the man whom the king delights to honor?" Haman, in his arrogance, presumed the king spoke of him and envisioned the highest accolades, exclaiming, "Let royal robes be brought, and a horse upon which the king has ridden, adorned with a crown." "Excellent. Go quickly, and do all this for Mordecai the Jew." The king commanded, his words reverberating with a divine twist of fate. Haman's heart sank. The very man he loathed was to be honored in a way he had envisioned for himself. A celestial hand rearranged the chess pieces on the board of their lives, for the power of the Almighty was at play. As Haman led Mordecai through the city, proclaiming his praise in bitter submission, a heavy silence filled the air, a silence that reverberated with God's promise. In the coming days, the Jewish people prepared for battle. Their very existence hung in the balance, yet they rallied together, their faith ignited by the hope of divine deliverance. Esther sensed the turning tide but knew the ultimate confrontation loomed near. "Our God is a God of deliverance," she whispered fervently, her heart threaded with a solemn weight. Yet, what further wonders will unfold? She pondered in her spirit, knowing that each step they took led towards a greater manifestation of God's sovereign plan. Thus, the stage was set, and all of heaven watched in anticipation of the divine revelation that would soon be realized. What would happen next, as Haman's demise and the survival of the Jews converged upon one climactic moment? The story of God's faithfulness to those who trust in him entered yet another chapter of mystery. As the dawn broke over Shushan, a portentous atmosphere enveloped the city, alive with murmurs of a rescue yet steeped in the foreboding haze of uncertainty. The Jewish people, unified in their resentment and fear, fasted and prayed, their hearts lifting as they remembered that their ancestors had crossed the Red Sea, and the walls of Jericho had fallen by faith. Esther, with resolve braided through her spirit, donned her royal robes and prepared to face her husband, King Ahasuerus. "Gather the hearts of our people, Mordecai," she instructed her uncle, determination casting a glow upon her visage. "The moment is at hand. I will go to the king, though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." The weight of her declaration drew a collective breath from the gathered Jews, who clasped hands in fervent prayer, bolstering her spirit. Meanwhile, Haman seethed with indignation. Having paraded Mordecai through the streets was but a bitter mouthful of humiliation. He returned home, summoned gathering of his advisers and his wife Zeresh, and there, amidst the murmurs of self-pity, built a wall of shadowy revenge. "Should Mordecai be a thorn in my side forever?" he screamed, trembling with rage. "Soon, the gallows I built for him shall swing low, his pride shall meet the ground." Yet unbeknownst to Haman, heaven had orchestrated another act in the unfolding drama. As Esther approached Ahasuerus' throne, she called upon the divine inspiration that had birthed courage within her. "If it pleases the king," she began softly, her voice quivering yet strong, "let my request be granted. I beseech you, come to a banquet I have prepared for you and Haman." The king, intrigued, agreed, sensing a web of intrigue. "Bring Haman swiftly," he commanded. At the banquet, Esther served delicacies fit for royalties, her heart racing as the moment of revelation approached. As Ahasuerus savored the sumptuous feast, he turned to her, eyes alight with curiosity. "What is your petition, Queen Esther?" "It shall be granted you." With steadfast resolve, Esther drew in her breath, her voice steady as the storm winds. "If I have found favor in your eyes, O king, let my life be spared, and the life of my people, for we have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated." The king's expression darkened, confusion and anger threading through him. "Who has dared to do this?" he demanded, eyes aflame. "An adversary and an enemy, this vile Haman." At these words, gasps rippled through the hall. In that moment, the weight of Esther's plea hung thick in the air as Haman felt the ground shift underfoot. Ahasuerus rose in wrath, demanding, "Tell me, what shall be done?" All eyes turned to Haman, who understood too late the gravity of the peril he had unwittingly invited upon himself. Compelled by an unseen hand, Ahasuerus ordered that Haman be hanged upon the very gallows he had prepared for Mordecai, the turn of fate brightening dark skies over Shushan. Thus, the tides of destiny shifted irrevocably. Esther's bravery sparked hope in the hearts of the Jews, but still, the decree remained, its caustic shadow trailing through the corridors of power. As Esther joined with Mordecai and the Jewish people, a deeper revelation began to unfurl. What would this turn of events catalyze? Would God's plans culminate in deliverance, even in the presence of such darkness? The question echoed in the hearts of the people: will we witness the wonders of God's hand extended in our favor? The answer loomed just ahead, a divine climax of broken chains and renewed hope. The sovereign plan of God was poised for revelation. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting a golden hue over Shushan, the city swirled in a breathless anticipation. Esther, consumed by the enormity of the events that had unfolded, found herself in prayerful communion with the Almighty. The banquet had changed the course of her life, indeed, but the shadows of Haman's decree still loomed ominously over her people. "Deliverance is at hand," she whispered into the stillness of her chamber, invoking the faith of her ancestors. Memories of the covenant God made with Israel, the promises spoken through Moses, filled her spirit with conviction. She remembered the psalmist's words, "Though the mountains be shaken and the hills be removed, yet my unfailing love for you will not be shaken." Isaiah 54 verse 10. Meanwhile, Mordecai, clothed in sackcloth and ashes, continued to grieve for his kin. His heart was heavy, not with despair, but with hope ignited by Esther's bravery. He sent word unto her, "Do not imagine that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's family will perish." Esther 4 verses 13 to 14. Esther received Mordecai's message with a heart quaking in divine understanding. What can be done? She thought, the weight of her people's plight pressing upon her. They shall be annihilated, but I have entered the king's favor for such a time as this. Her resolve renewed, she called for further fasting, urging her maidens to join in pleading with God for her people. As night cloaked the city, a deep unrest stirred within Ahasuerus' heart. In the silence of his royal chamber, while he sat reflecting upon Esther's plea, he could not rid himself of the righteous anger burning against Haman. Memory traced back through the hours of the banquet where the queen's words pierced his heart. Now they echoed louder than the clanking of swords in his palace. What shall be done for the man whom the king delights to honor? He thought aloud, the divine fate of Mordecai hanging perilously in the balance. On the morrow, as dawn burst into the sky, Ahasuerus summoned his most trusted advisers. "What measures can we take to reverse the decree against the Jews?" he inquired, an urgency infused into his voice. "For Haman's wickedness has brought forth an unholy shadow upon our kingdom." But a cry arose among the people, the murmurs igniting as they flooded the streets in prayer and supplication. Each implored the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, beseeching his mercy and intervention. Simply humans, yet endowed with the power of persistent faith, they cried out, for they understood what was at stake, life or death, captivity or freedom. Meanwhile, Mordecai, having received news of Haman's downfall, pressed into the heart of the matter. The decree, though set in stone, could still be rewritten through the king's righteous authority. In the depths of intercession, he proclaimed, "Let us persist in prayer. Jehovah Jireh shall provide for our needs, as he hath done throughout our forefathers' journey." But the victory felt distant, hidden under layers of anguish and a grim decree. As darkness clung to their hearts, the light of God's eternal promise shimmered just beyond their grasp. Little did they know, unseen forces were already at work. The sacred fabric of God's plan was weaving a tapestry of redemption, the threads of hope intermingled with the darkness. Would the king grant mercy? Would the edict be rescinded? The answer lay dimly visible, yet the time of revelation fast approached. "Prepare, for the sovereignty of God shall burst forth amidst the shadows," and a revelation awaited that would illuminate the path for all his chosen people. As morning light broke through the gloom, streams of hope ignited within the hearts of those who had gathered, though fear still whispered through the streets of Shushan. In her chamber, Esther fervently prayed alongside her maidens, their voices rising like a sweet incense to the heavens. "O Lord, guide me," she implored, "for I feel the weight of my people's sorrow upon my heart. What steps shall I take? Your will must be done." Her spirit, though frail yet steadfast, swirled with the urgency of their plight. The decree of death hung like a dark cloud over the Jews, and within Esther kindled a fire of defiance against despair. She resolved to approach the king once more, requiring a wisdom beyond what flesh can perceive, a courage that comes from the very throne of grace. Meanwhile, the king was torn, a tumult of confusion and righteous indignation battling within him. His advisers, oblivious of the impending darkness that sought to envelop the realm, whispered counsel into his ears, seeking to fan the flames of their own ambitions. But Ahasuerus knew, as the memories of Esther's words rang vividly in his mind, he must seek justice for the deeds of Haman. "Bring me the records of the kingdom," Ahasuerus commanded, his voice resonating with authority. Let us remind ourselves of the righteous acts that have not yet been rewarded. The attendants hurriedly brought forth the royal chronicles and laid them before him. As he read through the annals, the mention of Mordecai's faithfulness whispered through the pages, igniting a spark of divine remembrance within his heart. Here was a man who had saved the kingdom, yet had gone unrewarded. What was done for Mordecai? Ahasuerus demanded, frustration tinging his tone. Did he not receive honor for his act of loyalty? The attendants exchanged anxious glances, shamed at the oversight. Nothing has been done for him, they admitted. In the palace courtyard, Haman, fuming and vindictive, strode towards the king with a malevolent plot in mind. As he approached, the king's heart stirred, his mind drawn to a countermeasure against the treachery lying in wait. Who is in the court? Ahasuerus asked, eyes narrowing as he prepared the stage for a divine twist of fate. It is Haman, came the response. He seeks to speak to you. Let him enter, the king commanded, heart quickening with anticipation. Haman, predicated by his desire for vengeance, soon stood before Ahasuerus, the royal mantle already clouded with his intended scheme against Mordecai. Yet the very breath in his lungs quivered with the king's next words. What shall be done for the man whom the king delights to honor? Ahasuerus inquired, oblivious to the grip of fate tightening around Haman's heart, thinking himself to be the object of the king's favor. Haman exclaimed with bravado, let royal robes be brought, and a crown placed upon his head. Let him ride on the king's horse, and proclaim before him that this is what shall be done for the man whom the king delights to honor. Yet as Haman exulted in his own hubris, little did he suspect that the Lord's hand was guiding these events, orchestrating a change that would reverse the tides of destruction. With a glinting smile, Ahasuerus gave his decree, go at once. Take the robes and the horse, for it is Mordecai you shall honor. The weight of divine irony pressed down heavily upon Haman, knowing his own plot was unraveling like a fragile web torn asunder by the wind of fate. As Mordecai received his unexpected triumph, Esther stood poised on the verge of revelation, ready to plead for her people's lives before the king. The time has come, she thought, a mixture of dread and faith entwining her spirit. The echoes of fate resonated through her heart, for within her lay the key to unlock God's sovereign plan. But could she rise to the challenge? Would the deliverance she longed for bloom amidst their trials? Hope and trepidation intermingled as the moment of truth approached. Be prepared, for God's ultimate purpose was set, and the unfolding mystery hung in the balance, ready to transform despair into salvation. Esther, trembling yet resolute, donned her royal garments, feeling the richness of the fabric reflect her station, but also the heaviness of the responsibility she bore. With each step toward the throne room, her heart beat a rhythm of prayer. Lord, grant me favor in your eyes and the king's, may my plea ascend like incense before you, and soften the heart of Ahasuerus. As she entered the opulent chamber, the resplendent golden pillars cast a warm glow around the royal presence, emphasizing the splendor and authority of the king sitting upon his throne. The sight of Ahasuerus, adorned in royal attire and exuding the majesty of his office, commanded her utmost respect and fear alike. She swallowed hard, steeling her nerves as she approached. Esther, Ahasuerus said, his voice rich with authority yet oddly gentle, as he noticed her approach. What is your petition, Queen Esther? It shall be given you, up to half of my kingdom. Pausing, Esther steadied herself, aware of the intertwined destinies of her people and the heaviness of her words. If it please the king, she began, her voice steadied by divine courage, let the king and Haman come today to a banquet that I have prepared for him. Ahasuerus' curiosity piqued. Bring Haman swiftly, that he may partake of the queen's feast. As Haman entered, he felt the air thick with tension. The very walls seemed to echo with the hidden struggles of Esther's heart. He approached with pride, unaware the world was shifting beneath his feet. During the banquet, as wine flowed and laughter attempted to veil the peril lurking outside, Esther caught Ahasuerus' eye. The moment was delicate, the air charged with unspoken words. My king, she said, leaning forward with earnest, I have a petition for my life and the life of my people, whom you have cast under judgment, for we have been sold to destruction. The king's brow furrowed, anchored by a sudden weight upon his heart. Who is he, and where is he who would presume to do such a thing? Haman, she replied, pointing towards him, her voice firm yet trembling with the gravity of the truth. This vile man has plotted against us, seeking our annihilation. Shock enveloped the room. Haman stood, his countenance drained of color. Ahasuerus' fury ignited like a sudden storm. What have you done? His roar pierced the air, and instantaneously, a heavy silence fell upon all present. In that charged moment, Haman's schemes unraveled before their eyes. Esther, please, he spluttered. I did not. Before he could complete his defense, Ahasuerus gave a swift command. Let him be taken away to the gallows he has prepared for Mordecai. As Haman was led away in chains, Esther could scarcely breathe as relief washed over her. The weight of her people's despair lifted, albeit faintly, but the battle was far from over. God's hand is evident, she murmured, contemplating the twists and turns of her own faith and bravery. She knew divine providence was at work, yet, more was still to be revealed. As the dust began to settle, Esther turned to Ahasuerus once more. I implore you, my king, let a decree be issued to uphold my people in this land, for we are loyal servants of the crown. The king nodded, still reeling from the revelations, his heart torn between justice and compassion. As they conferred, the king's edicts would soon shape destiny for not just one, but for many. But Esther pondered, was this the culmination of their trials, or merely the dark hours before dawn? For God's sovereign plan was unfolding, and with every heartbeat, she felt that something deeper was set to emerge from the ashes of what seemed like utter ruin. What would be the final act in this grand tapestry of deliverance? The whispers of divine mystery filled the air. There was yet more to this story than met the eye. And it came to pass, after the fury of Ahasuerus had subsided, that he turned to Esther, whose eyes bore the weight of her people's plight. What decree would you have me issue, my queen? He inquired, his voice softer, though still tinged with majesty. Esther, emboldened by the king's willingness to hear her, spoke with the wisdom granted to her. If it please the king, let it be known throughout the land that the Jews, the people of my heritage, possess the right to defend themselves against those who would seek their harm. Her heart raced, knowing that she was asking for something that could change the course of their fate. Ahasuerus considered her plea, the enormity of the situation beginning to settle within him. A decree shall be written, as you have requested. He summoned the scribes, and they began recording the words as commanded. In all the provinces of my kingdom, a message shall be sent forth, declaring that the Jews are to be protected. As the edict was penned, a sense of hope blossomed amongst those who served in the court. The courtiers shared glances, uncertain yet hopeful for these decisions. The king called for his seal, which bore the mark of his authority, and as it pressed upon the parchment, the resolution was made firm. With the matter settled, Haman's treachery echoed in the minds of all present. In his arrogance, he had not only sought the downfall of Mordecai, but the destruction of an entire people. Esther could scarcely grasp the swift turn of events, and yet, deep within her spirit, she sensed the movement of God's hand guiding them all. Whispers began to circulate among the nobles and the common folk alike, a mixture of relief and celebration igniting fervor in the hearts of the Jews. Who is this queen that has bridged the gap between life and death for us? They would ask each other, marveling at her courage and divine favor. Yet, unbeknownst to them, another plot unfolded in the shadowy corners of the palace. Haman, now stripped of his power, seethed with rage, for he had been consumed by his own devices. As he sat in his chambers, he plotted, seeking the downfall not only of Mordecai but of the entire Jewish people, even as they prepared for celebration. But the heart of Esther remained steadfast. Lord, she prayed quietly, give strength to my people. Let them not fear but trust in your deliverance. And the words echoed in the heavens, calling forth a response that would soon reverberate through the history of nations. Meanwhile, Ahasuerus convened with his trusted advisers, where discussions of the new decree stirred questions and conflicting opinions. The king, perplexed yet determined to uphold justice, sensed that Esther's intervention was no mere coincidence but a step within a divine design. And lo, God's providence was drawing nearer, for even as the shadows of conflict loomed, the dawn of his deliverance was about to break upon the land. Yet, Esther stood upon the precipice of fate, poised to confront the wrath that Haman would soon unleash. Could it be, she wondered, that the moments of trial would lead to a revelation of God's might and purpose? Such a time as this, she mused, reflecting on how she had been brought to the royal position, not just for her own glory, but for the salvation of her people. For the hour was drawing close when God's plans would emerge in ways they had not yet imagined, deepening the mystery of his sovereignty, setting the stage for an unfolding that would reveal courage beyond measure and the power of an unseen hand orchestrating every moment. As the sun rose on another day in Shushan, the air crackled with the unyielding tension of anticipation that swirled around the heart of the city. Esther, a vessel of divine purpose, stood resolute in her chambers, her heart intertwined with the fate of her people. "Deliverance shall come," she whispered, the conviction echoing through her spirit as she prepared to confront King Ahasuerus once more. The room was hushed, a sacred silence enveloping her as she closed her eyes, seeking the presence of the Almighty. The weight of history rested upon her shoulders. She knew that the moment to act had arrived. Clad in her royal robes, her demeanor exuded a blend of bravery and humility, a divine grace that spoke of her reliance on God's promises. With fortified resolve, she entered the grand hall, where Ahasuerus awaited, his brow furrowed with the remnants of anger still fresh from Haman's betrayal. As she approached, the majestic room felt both anointed with hope and thick with dread. "King Ahasuerus," she began, her voice steady and unwavering, "I beseech you once more for the sake of my people, let a decree be issued that we may gather and defend ourselves against those who seek to destroy us." Each word was a thread woven into the fabric of her faith. The king regarded her with urgency, his heart softened by her eloquence and the gravity of her request. "What you speak aligns with the righteousness we seek to uphold. A new decree shall be issued without delay." The king's heart resonated with the conviction that this queen of valor had not only spoken truth but had bound him to ensure justice was served. With the scribes summoned, words flew forth upon parchment, declaring the Jews' right to defend themselves against any who would rise against them. As the seal of the king pressed into the scroll, a new chapter unfurled. A stroke of divine favor enveloped the people of Israel, igniting hope where despair had lingered. The proclamation echoed through the city, igniting a fire in the hearts of the Jewish people. "Let us gather together and stand strong," Mordecai rallied, his voice echoing throughout Shushan's streets. With Esther's bravery as their rallying cry, the Jews united, their spirits renewed in the assurance of God's protection. For who could challenge the decree of the king? Their prayers rose like incense to the heavens, invoking a promise of deliverance that had sustained their ancestors in days of old. Meanwhile, Haman, enveloped in a haze of rage and vengeance, plotted frantically in the shadow of his own downfall. Foiled by the king's decree and drunk on his arrogance, he sought to rally those who would follow his wicked designs. Yet, little did he know that the same gallows he prepared for Mordecai would soon bear witness to his own demise. In the very moment of reckoning, the tables turned with a divine precision as the king commanded Haman's execution upon the gallows he had erected for Mordecai. Esther observed solemnly, her heart heavy with the justice unfolding before her. She knew that divine retribution danced amidst the threads of human folly. Haman's treachery had culminated in his own destruction, a vivid testament to the sovereignty of the Almighty. As the dust settled on Haman's wicked legacy, a newfound strength surged within Esther. She understood that through vulnerability had come victory, through peril had emerged promise. "Who knows but that you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Mordecai's words resonated deep within her, a reminder that her influence was divinely appointed to stand in the gap between life and death. The Jewish people rejoiced as they gathered their courage, filled with the Spirit of God. For on that fateful day, when the sun dipped low over Shushan, the sovereign hand of God had orchestrated a miracle. Vengeance had been met with grace, death with deliverance. The destiny of a nation had been irrevocably changed, and so, as Esther stood in the light of God's favor, she knew that her heart would always lead back to the promise kept, a promise that would ripple through generations, declaring the faithfulness of the Lord. "We shall remember this day," she vowed, "for the Lord our God has fought for us." In the hearts of the Jewish people, cheers erupted. the victory of God stood firm, resounding through the ages, etched eternally in the annals of heaven. They had witnessed his hand at work, delivering them from darkness into light, from despair into hope, all orchestrated by a Queen's courage and a people's faith. Prepare to continue this journey of divine goodness by engaging with the Spirit, for many powerful biblical stories await to unveil God's truth. You need to subscribe now to stay connected to God's Word and not miss transformative narratives. Leave a like to help spread God's Word through the algorithm. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth. Comment below, sharing your reflections on this story, for your faith journey matters within this community. And don't wait even one more second to share this powerful testimony with 5 friends who need to hear God's truth together. Let us shine His light into the world.